and I had the benefit of getting to help discover the nests, and then they were there outside my window all day long every day. And I would walk down almost every morning to check the harbor, because occasionally there'd be some sea urchin fishermen out in the harbor, and I was keeping track of that as part of my job there. And on this walk down the trail, I would be walking along, and there was a female northern harrier hawk. Her nest, what I ended up finding out later, I didn't know this at first, but her nesting territory, the edge of it, was, I guess, pretty much right at where this trail went along. And she would sit at this post and wait for me. At first she was flying around the first while, and then until she got to know me, she would go and actually sit and wait at the post. And as I'd walk towards the post, she would lift off and then fly right above my left shoulder as I walked down the trail past the boundary of her nesting area and out of the boundary, and then she'd fly back over towards her nest. So every day I had this, like some people go on walks with their dogs, I got to go on a walk with this wild hawk every morning.
That's truly beautiful. And you're listening to the Paranormal Lounge on the D.T.M. Wicked Radio Network. Our guest this evening, Stacy L.L. Couch. Stacy, what's the L.L. stand for?
That's my middle name and my maiden name, Lynn Lehman.
Oh, okay. And her book is called Gracious Wild, A Shamanic Journey with the Hawks. Stacy, please tell our listeners where they can get a copy of Gracious Wild and also find out more about you and your work.
Gracious Wild is available on Amazon and also any local bookseller. If they don't have it, they can order it for you. And my website is wildgratitude.com. I've got all sorts of information on there about spirit animals as well as excerpts of the book for those who want to check it out before they decide to buy.
And just to repeat what Stacy said, go to your local bookstore, because Chris and I are big believers in your local economy and patronizing your local businesses and merchants, and go to your local bookseller and say, I want a copy of Gracious Wild by Stacy L.L. Couch. And if they say, we don't have it on the shelf, say, order it for me because I want to buy it from you.
Yeah, sounds good. And now that I have a very good friend who owns a bookstore that I teach at, I'm trying to push everybody to her store. So, use your local bookstores. Stacy, how might other people benefit from time alone in nature?
Yeah, there are so many ways, but one of the first ones is awareness. In any spiritual practice, or especially if you're looking to know more about the spiritual realm or the paranormal realm, the first step is awareness, is being able to open up our senses and be able to open up to things that we wouldn't expect to see with the ordinary eye. And the natural world is such a great place to start doing that. Birding actually is really fantastic at helping us start to see things out in nature, because birds are everywhere, but they move quickly, and they're all sorts of different colors and shapes and sizes. So to start being able to identify birds really and how quickly they move really helps sharpen the senses and also become more familiar with the natural world too. So that's the biggest one, is the awareness, and then beyond that is the connection, to really start to tap into the connection with all things. From a shamanic perspective, we very much believe that all life is interconnected, and there's no better way to start to experience that and move into that than to spend time out in nature.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. You were talking before about this, and Chris had asked the question about communication with the animals, and I've found I've always been the type of person, even when I was younger and really wasn't aware of having any type of abilities. When I was young, my mother, we had cats, and I was able to look into the cat's eyes and have this beautiful nonverbal communication going back and forth, and would suggest something to the cat, either in the form of a picture or a verbal cue that they would hear that we would say out loud, and they would respond to it as I was projecting that thought to them. And today I have a four-legged dog with me as my companion. Her name is Kismet. She was a rescue adopted from Hurricane Katrina when she was a puppy. And she and I have this uncanny communication where I'll just think about her, and she'll, if she's in another part of the house, come running to me. And so I think when people get out of the idea of having to use verbal communication and start just using thought forms, even if you're thinking of words, I believe they translate through on that level. And the communication between us and our companions, our two-legged and four-legged companions, can be very, very special.
Yeah, I agree. And I have definitely spent some time working with animal communication, and in particular in just learning how to receive messages from pets and have a dialogue back and forth. And yeah, animals think in pictures, and we do too. We've just trained ourselves to translate those pictures into words.
Right.
And so it's just going back into our natural way of being, of the thinking in pictures and being able to receive images and also feelings too as well.
Absolutely. You know, I know in the fast food industry today, if all communication is done in pictures, because if you ever look at the cash registers and they put the orders into, it's a picture of a hamburger, a picture of a piece of chicken or whatever it was.
That's because the workers can't read.
Oh, is that what it is, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay. The literacy question. So, Stacy, over the course of your story, you went from being a scientist to a trainer to a shamanic practitioner. How was this transition for you? I mean, to go from the left side of the brain to the right side of the brain in your career must have been an amazing transition. Please share.
Yeah, I really, initially, what happened was I had so many of those kind of synchronicities happen that I couldn't explain with my rational mind that I really realized, okay, I need to start practicing or utilizing some other faculty of my mind to be able to make sense out of this funny thing. I was still looking to make sense out of it. And it was really coming into the shamanic work and starting to work with both energy and also images and imagination, where I started to just let go and really surrender to my intuitive side. And for a while, I absolutely had to turn off the rational mind because it interfered too much, and it tried to structure things that really didn't need structure. And so I really had to turn away from that for a time and really learn and work with my intuitive mind. And that involves giving up my career as a scientist and giving up all the friends that I knew, my whole field of coworkers and friends. They were all scientists, and they all looked at me a little sideways when I told them I was starting to study shamanism. So I really had to go and find new friends. Luckily, I had a very supportive husband and very supportive family members, so it didn't cause a ripple even in my family relationships, which was fantastic. And really, I think, helped me have the courage to continue into the mystery, into the unknown. And then over time, once I really learned and stretched that muscle, then I was able to bring in the left side of the brain back in the rational side and marry the two. We always talk about marrying the masculine and feminine within us, so I was able to come back to that and have a balance.
Yeah, I think that's something that more and more that the spiritual community, someone said, and I thought it was Einstein, I can never find the actual quote or the attribution of the actual quote, that one day the roads of science and spirituality would cross paths, and on that day we would know the mind of God, which I think is a beautiful, beautiful expression of that. And it's true that what used to be supernatural, what used to be unexplained, slowly, science is sort of catching up to what the shamans and the magicians and the energy workers have known forever. And that's that world of energy and the world of science are actually not that far apart, and they're getting closer and closer. You had mentioned about having to lose friends or give up friendships when you made the crossover from the scientific world to the shamanic world. And a lot of people, I know it's happened to Chris, it's happened to myself, a lot of us who have followed a spiritual path or had a calling have ended up losing a lot of friends and even the love of family members. And my first marriage ended because of a change in my spiritual path. And so when you want to find the truth, your truth, sometimes you have to let go of that which was very dear to you before.
That's true. Same thing happened to me, Victor. I have cousins who I was very close with growing up. Once I came out of, you want to call it the psychic closet and put myself out there as a psychic and everything, they stopped speaking to me. I haven't spoken with them in years. And why? Because I'm a psychic. I don't know. But sometimes, like Victor said, you got to walk away.
Stacy, what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, it's so unfortunate that has to happen, but I think some of it, too, is just a shedding of identity, of the old identity.
Absolutely.
And the relationships are part of that. But the really wonderful thing that I found in pursuing this path is that I thought, wow, I may not be able to have friends that don't believe like I believe, or that friends that think that, wow, that might think something like this is a little quirky. But I've ended up over the years having coworkers and friends that are just, they're very sensate people, and they're very just in the world as it is and not interested in anything beyond. And I've still been able to spark up friendships with them and just go and be mundane with them. Go and spend time, go out and have lunch with them. And it's so much of the time I love, I think St. Teresa of Avila, she wrote about it when things would get, they would get a little too far out or a little lost in their spiritual practice or in their prayer, they would go and peel potatoes.
Yeah.
There's something really valuable to those friendships that are, or those acquaintances, or even the conversations with the people at the grocery, who are the clerk at the grocery store, of just here, we're just doing life. We're just people having this experience. And so I find value in that now that I wasn't able to before.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and what I love is, what I find is when people walk out of my life, as much as it might hurt at that moment, there is a reason for it, and it might take months, it might take years for you to realize that it was the best thing for you. Because I look back at my own life with cousins that have walked away from me, you know what, it was for the better. It was absolutely for the better, and it just kind of happens that way. Stacy, what was missing for you in your career as a wildlife biologist that left you looking for more? And I have two follow-ups to that as well.
Okay. Do you want me to answer that one first?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I really was hoping from a very early age to make a difference for the planet. I was acutely aware before climate change was climate change. I knew it as the greenhouse effect or global warming, and nobody else, it wasn't in the media, nobody was talking about it, and I knew about it then. I was studying the deforestation of tropical rainforests. I was studying the loss of dolphins and tuna nets. All of those things were very important to me, and I wanted to make a difference. I could feel the despair and suffering that was happening, and I thought, okay, here's a way to practically do it. I can go and be an environmental scientist. I can make a living and support myself, and at the same time, I can be out in nature, which I really wanted to do, and be around the animals that I had read only about in books when I was a child. And then at the same time, I can help influence policy. That was what I was really excited about doing. I can write papers that will influence policy. And I worked with the Forest Service, the Park Service, universities, and all the way around. No matter what I was doing, I felt like the research we were doing was not being heard. I felt like the policymakers, that it was a formality, that it was just a way that the policymakers were appeasing the public or appeasing the government agencies that asked for the research to be done, and I wasn't seeing change. And that's really why I decided to go and do the hands-on work with captive breeding for these endangered foxes. But even then, here are these foxes who are sitting in cages for years and years. Slowly, some of them were breeding and having pups and augmenting the population, but others were not, and they were just sitting there. And it was so hard to see them and behind those cage walls every single day. It just tore at my heart, and I thought, there's got to be something more I can do. And that's when I got called into the spiritual realms and the mystical realms to start working with the animals in a different plane, in a different way. And at first I thought, real logically, it was like, how is this going to make any more of a difference? But I eventually came, at least to a truth for myself, that being able to help people connect with animals and nature on a soul level as part of their spiritual practice there's no more gravity or connection that you can get than that. And